7 German fighters, 1 American pilot, no altitude advantage, no cloud cover, no escape route outlined in any training manual. The radio operator back at base heard him report it, his voice calm, almost detached, and then silence for long minutes of it. When the channel crackled back to life, all 7 contacts had vanished from the sky, and the kid from Nebraska was still aloft. It was the spring of 1944, and the war over Europe had become a conflict of arithmetic, bomber streams counted in the hundreds, fighter escorts measured by squadrons, loss ratios calculated to the decimal. Every mission became a ledger of fuel, ammunition, altitude, and blood. The 8th Air Force had finally acquired the tool it needed in the P-51 Mustang, a long-range, high-speed fighter with elegant lines slicing through air that other aircraft had to batter aside. It could escort heavy bombers all the way to Berlin and back, hunt enemies, and endure punishment, but a fighter's effectiveness depended entirely on the man at the controls. Most pilots arriving in England by early 1944 were products of the American training system, shaped by months of instruction, hundreds of flight hours, gunnery ranges in Nevada, and formation drills over Texas. They arrived confident, capable, and very young. But the air war demanded more than confidence. Among them was 2nd Lieutenant James Howard Callahan, 22, brown-haired, of average build, quiet in the briefing room, from a Nebraska town so small it barely warranted a dot on most maps. His father ran a hardware store, his mother taught piano, and Callahan had learned to fly in a fabric-covered Piper Cub on a grass strip outside Lincoln, paying for lessons with wages earned unloading grain trucks. No one expected much from him. He didn't boast of kills, didn't swagger, didn't spin tails in the officers' club, and while others postured and compared scores, Callahan sat quietly with a notepad, sketching angles, arcs, and vectors in the margins. He asked maintenance crews about engine tolerances, control surface flex, and the Mustang's spin characteristics at high indicated airspeeds. The other pilots called him the clerk, not kindly, though his squadron commander noted the nickname in a letter home and added an observation that would emerge decades later. Before every flight, Callahan would sit in the cockpit for 10 minutes, eyes closed, hands moving silently over the controls, as if flying a mission only he could see. James Callahan had not planned to become a pilot. He had intended to study engineering at the University of Nebraska starting in fall 1940, until a barnstormer landed near his family farm offering $5 rides. Callahan spent a week's wages to go aloft, later describing it as the first time the world made sense. On the ground, motion felt chaotic, tractors failed, horses spooked, wind knocked objects over, but in the air everything obeyed rules. Lift, drag, thrust, weight, laws that could be understood, predicted, and survived. He soloed after 7 hours. His instructor remarked he had never seen a student so calm in a stall, as Callahan simply waited with relaxed hands on the yoke until the nose dropped and the wing bit clean air again, treating the airplane not as a machine to dominate but as a system to cooperate with. When Pearl Harbor came, he enlisted the next day, not from anger but logic. The country needed pilots. He could fly. The equation was simple. Flight training revealed something unusual. Callahan wasn't the fastest, nor the sharpest shot. His aerobatics were competent but not spectacular, yet his situational awareness scores were the highest his instructors had recorded. In mock dogfights, he never lost track of an opponent. In navigation exercises, he never became disoriented, seeming to hold the entire three-dimensional sky in his mind, updating it continuously. One instructor wrote he was unremarkable except for an uncanny ability to think in 4 dimensions simultaneously, recommending fighter assignment. He shipped to England in January 1944, joined the 357th Fighter Group of the 8th Air Force, and by March had flown 16 escort missions with no kills, no losses, no drama, just steady professional flying that kept bombers alive and earned no headlines. His squadron mates respected his competence but found him odd. He didn't drink, didn't chase women in London, and didn't even seem to hate the Germans. When asked why he flew, he said he wanted to see whether his theory about energy management was correct, earning laughter because war was chaos, not theory. Callahan didn't argue and kept filling his notebooks as the Luftwaffe evolved, shedding green pilots and outdated tactics until only hardened veterans remained, men with dozens of victories flying FW-190s radial-engined, heavily armed fighters fast in a dive and lethal in a snap roll. The Germans employed a tactic called the Schwarm split, approaching in a loose finger four before dividing into pairs, one baiting Americans into a turning fight while the other slashed in from an unexpected angle, firing and vanishing before escorts could respond, a maneuver that killed many inexperienced pilots. The 8th Air Force studied the problem and issued sound guidance: stay in pairs, don't chase single bandits, keep speed and altitude, but it assumed altitude, wingmen, and support. On April 12, a briefing outlined a deep strike near Magdeburg, over 300 B-17s escorted by a rotating formation. Callahan's squadron assigned the final leg. Studying the map, he noted the route passed through an area known for heavy Luftwaffe presence and warned his flight leader, who waved it off based on intelligence estimates. prompting Callahan to nod silently while that night he sketched a maneuver violating every rule in the manual, a deliberate energy dump traded for impossible angles that might work once if timing was perfect and the aircraft held together. The mission launched at dawn on April 13 under clear skies. The bombers struck their target, flak was heavy but inaccurate, attacks sporadic, and everything proceeded as planned until Callahan's engine began misfiring. Ordered to fall back and nurse at home, he throttled down, adjusted mixture and prop pitch, watched his squadron vanish ahead, then found the engine smoothing out as contrails appeared to the south, 8 of them descending rapidly toward the bombers. Doing the math, Callahan realized the Germans would strike from the beam out of the sun and tear through the formation before escorts could respond, leaving him 2 choices: call it in and hope, or go alone. He chose the insane option, shoved the throttle forward, dove hard, airspeed climbing past 400 miles per hour as the Merlin screamed, controls stiffened, and the airframe shuddered. His goal wasn't kills but disruption, forcing the attackers to react to him, and when one FW-190 turned head-on, black crosses stark against mottled gray-green paint, Callahan held his fire, let the closure rate build, absorbed tracer fire arcing past his canopy, and then broke, but not in the way anyone expected. He chopped the throttle, popped the speed brakes, pulled back on the stick hard enough that the G-force grayed his vision. The P-51 lurched upward violently, shedding speed in under 2 seconds. The FW-190 streaked past beneath him, fully committed to its dive and unable to decelerate in time. Callahan rolled inverted, pulled through, and dropped onto the German's tail. 1 burst, 2 seconds. The FW-190's canopy exploded, and the fighter cartwheeled away trailing smoke. There was no time to watch it fall. The other 6 had already repositioned. They came at him in pairs, classic swarm splits, 2 from the left, 2 from the right, 2 from above. Callahan broke toward the nearest pair, not away but directly at them. It violated every accepted rule. You never turn into a bogey with a closure rate that high. It handed them a shot, a lethal one, but it also collapsed the geometry, shrinking a 3-second firing window into a half-second snapshot, and snapshots miss. The FW-190S fired and missed. Callahan rolled wings vertical and hauled back, dragging the Mustang into a climbing spiral. The German fighters tried to follow, but their energy state was wrong. They had come in fast, now they were slow and exposed. Callahan reversed, extended, then came back around. Another burst. Another FW-190 streaming smoke, its pilot bailing out. 5 left. The next 3 minutes blurred into pure motion. Callahan flew in a way no one had witnessed before, neither purely defensive nor purely offensive, but somewhere between. He exploited every scrap of energy, every quirk of the P-51's handling, every half-second of decision time. When the Germans climbed, he dove. When they dove, he climbed. He never offered a stable firing solution. He never became predictable. He turned the fight into a math problem no one else could process fast enough. 2 more FW-190s went down, 1 to gunfire, 1 to structural failure after pulling too hard while trying to follow Callahan through a negative G pushover. 3 remained. They disengaged not from fear, but from logic. 3 veterans recognized a losing fight. They turned east and ran for home. Callahan let them go. His ammunition was nearly expended. His fuel state was critical. The bombers were safe. He turned west and radioed his position. The controller's voice came back confused. They had seen the contrails, heard the clipped radio calls, but they had counted 8 German fighters. Callahan confirmed 8. The controller asked how many P-51s had engaged. Callahan paused, then answered, 1. Silence followed, long enough that he wondered if the transmission had failed. Then the controller asked him to repeat. Callahan did. 1 P-51, 8 FW-190s, 4 confirmed destroyed, 3 withdrawn, 1 engaged and driven off. Another silence. Then he was cleared direct to base and told that intelligence would want to speak with him immediately upon landing. Callahan acknowledged and began climbing back to altitude. His hands were steady on the controls, his breathing calm, as if he had just finished a routine training sortie. Below him, the bomber stream continued west, untouched. The intelligence officer did not believe him at first, not until 3 separate bomber crews corroborated the sequence, not until gun camera footage showed 4 distinct FW-190s centered in Callahan's gunsight, not until reconnaissance located wreckage from 2 of the German fighters matching the reported positions. Only then did the story spread. The small-town kid, the quiet one, the clerk, had done something that should not have been possible. The squadron commander summoned him and asked him to explain the maneuver, the abrupt deceleration, the deliberate energy bleed, the turn into the attack. Callahan tried. He spoke about lift coefficients at extreme angles of attack, about using drag as a tool rather than an adversary, about forcing an overshoot by turning yourself into a moving brake. The commander nodded and wrote it down, but Callahan could tell he did not fully grasp it. It was not something that could be taught. It had to be seen, felt, lived in 3 dimensions, trusting the aircraft to hold together. The Army Air Forces moved quickly. Within a week,
Callahan's maneuver appeared in a tactical supplement. It was taught to fighter groups across England, demonstrated, practiced, refined. Some pilots mastered it. Most did not.
It demanded a level of spatial awareness and timing that could not be trained, only discovered. But those who could use it survived, and the Germans learned to fear it. By June, Luftwaffe intelligence circulated a memo describing a new American tactic, a sudden energy dump in close combat followed by a reversal, warning pilots to avoid prolonged turning engagements with P-51s unless absolutely necessary. The risk of an overshoot was too great. They did not know it traced back to one man, one fight, one moment of improvisation. Callahan flew 37 more missions. He finished the war with 11 confirmed kills, respectable but not extraordinary. He never became an ace. He never sought attention. Yet pilots who flew with him said something that echoed for decades. When Callahan was airborne, they felt safer, not because he shot down more Germans, but because he altered how the sky behaved. He made the impossible predictable. James Callahan returned to Nebraska in the fall of 1945. He spoke little of the war, skipped reunions, and wrote no memoirs. He resumed studies at the University of Nebraska, completed his engineering degree, and took a position with an agricultural equipment manufacturer, designing grain elevator systems, quiet, precise work. In 1952, a reporter located him after the Air Force declassified mission reports and Callahan's name appeared in a study on fighter tactics. When asked about the fight, the 8 versus 1, the maneuver that influenced doctrine, Callahan said he had simply done what the situation required. He noted that the airplane had done most of the work. He said he had been fortunate. Pressed on whether he had been afraid, Callahan paused, then answered no. He had not been afraid. He had been curious whether the math would hold, whether the P-51 could withstand the strain, whether logic could overcome chaos. He said the war had taught him one lesson: when you respect the rules of physics, those rules protect you, even when everything else is collapsing. He died in 1998 at the age of 76. His obituary mentioned his engineering career, his family, and his military service. It did not mention the 8 FW-190s. But in a filing cabinet in his basement, his son discovered 70 notebooks filled with sketches, diagrams, and equations, every mission he had flown, every maneuver he had contemplated, every angle he had calculated. On the final page of the last notebook, written in pencil, was a single sentence: "The sky is not chaos, it is just math no one has solved yet." The notebooks were donated to the National Museum of the United States Air Force, where they remain in the archives, rarely viewed but preserved, a record of a mind that approached war not as spectacle, but as a problem to be solved. James Callahan never became famous. He never sought glory. He did not need to. He had already proven what mattered, that one person thinking clearly and acting decisively could change the outcome of a battle, that ingenuity outweighed bravado, that courage was not the absence of fear but the presence of logic under pressure. 7 German fighters, 1 American pilot, no escape route in any manual, but James Callahan never needed a manual. He wrote his own.